everyone, and welcome. Today, we're diving into a seriously fascinating ideological standoff. In this explainer, we're going to unpack a really fierce, very public dispute between the Chinese state and a fringe movement known as Lifechanyuan. So on one side, you have this highly critical video produced by the China Anti-Cult Network. It's called The Evil Home, and it levels some major, heavy allegations against the group. But then, on the flip side, we have this fiery 25-point rebuttal letter written by Shui Feng, the founder of Lifechanyuan. We're going to look strictly at the source material to map out the exact anatomy of this conflict. We're just acting as neutral observers here to understand what happens when two totally incompatible realities collide. Okay, let's dive right into this. We're structuring today's explainer into 6 parts. 1, the raid and the video. 2, clashing over elder care. 3, finances and broken families. 4, morality, youth, and law. 5, ideology and divine claims. And 6, the final ultimatum.
Section 1. The raid and the video. The spark of the conflict.
To really grasp this 25-point rebuttal, we kind of have to wind the clock back and look at the timeline. Because according to Xia Feng, this tension didn't just pop up overnight. He points out that the very first government dismantling, or what he refers to as smashing, of their communal homes actually started way back in 2013. But the real flashpoint? That happened on April 28, 2021. That's when hundreds of police raided 2 of their locations in Guizhou province. It was this specific police action that birthed the state's documentary-style video, which then prompted Xia Feng to publish his detailed open letter rebuttal in July of that same year. Now, what's really interesting here is how immediately and how completely these 2 narratives diverge on the actual nature of the raid. It really shows you just how powerful information warfare can be. The state's video frames the operation as a successful, safe rescue mission, right? Liberating brainwashed believers without a single mishap. While Shu Feng fiercely rejects that. He claims his members were coerced and intimidated. He actually says he possesses leaked photographic evidence of a female member with her hands bound behind her back, with a police officer pointing a weapon at her. He even compares the tactics to a military execution. So you have this incredibly stark contrast, a narrative of peaceful liberation on one side and brutal suppression on the other. Section 2. Clashing over elder care, the case of Fosse Celestial. You know, one of the most emotional battlegrounds in this whole dispute actually revolves around the elderly. The state's video features a star witness, a man named Wang Gung. He claims that his 80-year-old mother, Fosse Celestial, was manipulated by Shui Feng into handing over her bank cards and basically severing all ties with her family. Shui Feng's rebuttal? He flatly denies it. He demands material evidence of this supposed financial theft. And he paints a completely different picture. He argues that Fosse Celestial voluntarily sought refuge with them because the home provides peaceful, comfortable care for members over 80. In fact, Shui Feng provocatively asks the authorities to pause and consider why an 80-year-old woman would supposedly prefer to live with him rather than her very own devoted son. Section 3. Finances and broken families. Economic allegations. Like we see all the time in conflicts between states and fringe movements, money is a huge friction point. The state presents testimony from a man named Lu Qiang, asserting that his wife secretly sold off their family assets and donated hundreds of thousands of yuan to the cult. Shui Feng flips this narrative entirely on its head. He claims Lu Qiang is actually an inveterate gambler, that the guy lost their pig farm and their house at the betting table, literally leaving his family destitute. According to Shui Feng, the wife donated absolutely nothing to Lifechanyuan. He says she actually arrived seeking refuge, having bought her train ticket with pocket money given to her by her daughter. And the allegations regarding broken families? They get even heavier. The state includes a claim from another man, Li Yutian, who basically implies his wife's departure for the group was so devastating that it caused her father to develop fatal lung cancer and die within a matter of days. Shu Feng's defense here acts almost like a neutral reporter, fact-checking a timeline, pointing out massive chronological impossibilities. He asserts the couple actually divorced by mutual consent way back in 2009. That was before Lifechanyuan even existed. And as for the father, Shu Feng claims he actually died 7 years later.
Section 4. Morality, youth, and law. The battle for normalcy.
Beyond just the money, the state really goes after the group's basic morality, especially when it comes to kids. They accuse the group of letting a 13-year-old boy run wild, effectively denying him a proper education. Shu Feng counters this by explaining the boy was brought there by his terminally ill mother, and after her passing, with his extended family's blessing, the home actually enrolled him in a local elementary school. And here's where Shu Feng points out a glaring visual contradiction in the state's own video. He claims the footage of the boy being taken by police clearly shows him wearing the local school's uniform. So he's saying, how can you claim his education was interrupted when you literally arrested him in his school uniform? This battleground also spills over into healthcare. The state asserts that members suffered because they couldn't receive timely medical attention. Shufeng attempts to flip the script completely here too. He argues that the home's medical support system actually surpasses ordinary family care. He states that anyone who falls ill is immediately taken to the hospital, and get this, is assigned at least 4 dedicated carers to wait on them around the clock. Now, you might be wondering about the legality of all this, right? Well, the police justified their raids by citing the group's unregistered status in China. And this leads us to a fundamental legal question that Xuefeng throws right back at the authorities. Does failing to register make an organization inherently illegal? His defense here is highly provocative. He asks if the early Chinese Communist Party was registered with the nationalist government when it was founded, essentially implying that by their own logic, the state's ruling party would also be historically illegal. Furthermore, he argues that as an international family, they are in fact legally registered with the Canadian government. Section 5. Ideology and Divine Claims. The Theological Core. Okay, so after all that talk about property and law, we absolutely have to look at the highly controversial spiritual claims at the center of the state's spiritual tumor label. These claims are massive. Shufeng publicly asserts that he is the direct incarnation of Jesus Christ, the Buddha, the Prophet Muhammad, and the sage Lao Tzu. This is the core reason the state targets him. But Shufeng uses a rather unique psychological defense in his letter. He argues that a person couldn't possibly fake a claim of this magnitude for 20 years and remain perfectly clear-headed. He basically challenges the authorities to try making such a claim themselves, arguing that any normal person would become mentally unhinged within a year if they were lying about something so huge. And this brilliantly illustrates how Shufeng builds a highly unusual ideological defense against the state's labels. When the government calls his teachings a spiritual tumor or heretical doctrines, he challenges them to intellectually refute his 800 values. He claims his massive theoretical system is totally in accord with the world's great religions and sages. But perhaps most fascinatingly, to counter the label of an evil home, he explicitly claims his community is built upon Karl Marx's theory of communism. So he creates this really complex blend of world religion and Marxist theory, seemingly designed to challenge the state's heresy accusations head-on. Finally, Section 6, the final ultimatum, a karmic debt. So the crucial point is how this letter ends. As Shufeng closes his open letter, his tone shifts from these defensive explanations to a dramatic, escalating threat anchored by one massive number, 120 million. That is the total yuan value that Shufeng claims the government now owes his organization. To put that into perspective, he calculates that over the years, the state has smashed 12 of their communal homes, valuing each one at roughly 10 million yuan. But he frames this not just as a legal grievance, but as an inescapable karmic debt. And he seals this financial calculation with a genuinely chilling spiritual promise directed right at the state officials. He writes, "Until the account is settled in full, we will absolutely not let your souls rest in peace." It is a moment of intense, eternal gravity in the text. Shufeng is telling the state apparatus that even death will not save them from this debt, that his members will pursue this justice from the heights of the sky to the depths of the underworld. And that brings us to the end of today's explainer. We've seen a state narrative of rescuing exploited citizens matched against a founder's narrative of peaceful elders, fabricated gambling debts, and a divine Marxist utopia. It leaves us with a really provocative thought. When a fringe group and a powerful state present two entirely incompatible realities, each claiming absolute truth, how do we as outsiders cut through the noise to uncover what really happened? Thank you so much for exploring this fascinating ideological standoff with us, and we hope this structural breakdown gives you a clearer lens to view how these complex global conflicts unfold.